Hello and welcome to the Uprising Show. And today I have very special guest, Dr. Messerlian. Please take a minute to introduce yourself to our listeners, please.
Hi, Vivek. I'm Dr. Carmen Messerlian. I'm a reproductive epidemiologist, a scientist, an AI pioneer, and a thought leader around reproductive health. Fertility and pregnancy and child health are the areas that I've been studying at Harvard as a professor for the last 10 and a half years. And I'm now also the founder of a new fertility startup called Vie Science. And I'm also the founder of a nonprofit, which is a research institute called the Vie Science Institute for Generational Health.
We are going to talk about all the things that you mentioned. And, of course, you are reshaping how we think about fertility and not just treatment, but as a cornerstone of lifelong health. So I'm really excited about to go deeper into that. But let's go back in time first. Where were you born and raised? Were either of your parents a doctor?
No. So I was born and raised in mostly Montreal, Canada. I'm Canadian. I was born to immigrant parents who came to Canada as adults. My mom was 19 and my dad was 36 when he moved to Canada. My dad is Armenian, but he was born in Beirut, Lebanon. So he immigrated from the Middle East. And my mother was born and raised in Greece, and she came to Canada on a boat. They both came on boats into a pier in Canada and tried to start a new life. They met in Canada and they had my brother, then me, then my sister. I grew up in a very multicultural home. My dad spoke 10 languages. I had a very mixed linguistic environment. My parents are highly intelligent people, but never had any kind of educational opportunity. So my dad never graduated even from middle school or high school. He only had a grade 6 education. And my mom graduated from high school, but they worked as business people. They ran essentially a 7-Eleven in Canada, the equivalent of a 7-Eleven. And they worked really hard. They worked 7 days a week from 7 to 11 my entire childhood. I was mostly left to my own devices at home with my brother and sister, and I had a lot of responsibilities in the home. And I was a very curious scientist from a very young age. And I try to balance my home duties because I was kind of like the mother hen from a very young age, given that my parents were not super available. And I balanced that with my curiosity for the world. And I spent a lot of time outdoors in Canada, which had an enormous influence on my choice and my career trajectory.
Wow, fascinating. I always ask, especially with folks who have immigrant backgrounds, it's, the first generation is always in like survival mode. They're in different country. There's so much goes on. But then for you personally, there is a little leap you have to make out of that survivorship to building now like either entrepreneurial career or your career. Did you have to do some kind of like unlearning in the process?
Oh my God, it takes a lifetime to unlearn. So if you're an immigrant child, you know what the environment's like. I had parents who barely spoke English, didn't have any money, didn't have an education, worked around the clock in a business, had very different values and very different cultural beliefs around society and around girls and around school and around just culture. I was fairly sequestered as a child. I didn't have a lot of opportunities to engage with friends, and I didn't live a typical Canadian teenager lifestyle. I was very committed to my education because my parents very much valued education, as a lot of immigrant parents do. My ballet, my piano, my sports, just like a typical kid whose parents put a lot of emphasis on the opportunities they're going to afford and the sacrifices that they made to ensure that the next generation gets out of what they have, which is bringing kids into a new, raising children in a new country and sacrificing their own well-being, because that's what immigrant parents do, for the benefit of the next generation. I took that responsibility very seriously because I witnessed firsthand how hard my parents worked and how stressful finances were and how hard it was, the hardships, the linguistic barriers, the cultural barriers, even racism, even though we're white people. My dad is Middle Eastern. He didn't look Canadian. He didn't act Canadian. They have very thick accents. We were kind of a little prejudiced, there was prejudice, and we grew up in a tiny little town where it was mostly white people and very waspy kind of Anglo-Saxon kind of background. And we were definitely different. That colored my experience as a child. But also my values and my culture were very much part of who I was. And there's always this thing where you don't want to disappoint your parents when you're an immigrant child, right? You don't want to let them down. I took that responsibility pretty heavily, which is probably why I maximized my educational potential through a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD, a postdoc, and then a career in academia at Harvard. Not that my parents ever put expectations or pressures that were direct or enforced. It wasn't like you should be an academic, you should be a doctor, you should be a professor. It was just this expectation that don't waste your intelligence. And my dad was really cool because he grew up in a very, Middle East and the belief systems back in the 50s and 60s, because he was born in 1933. He lived in a hut, essentially, in Syria and Beirut and places, no running water, no fridge, no stove, nothing, right? Pre-World War II, right? In Middle East was not, and he lived in Damascus at the time. His beliefs were colored by his culture that he lived in, but for me as a woman, he empowered me more than my mother, which is really, really telling. Like, my dad told me when I was 5 or 6, my grandmother and my mother would be like, making me do domestic stuff all the time. And my dad would say to me, "You're not meant to be in the kitchen. You're way too smart to be cooking and cleaning. Get to your books." And he gave me this message from a very young age that I was very intelligent and I wasn't going to waste that trying to be a housewife, that I should take that skill and that gift and use it for something important. And he modeled that, my dad. I'm speaking a lot about my dad. My dad modeled a life of generosity to society. He invested a lot of his time in improving the lives of Canadians. My childhood was about helping new immigrants and new Canadians and refugee and asylum seekers, because my dad, he spoke many languages. So he was involved in bringing Canadians and integrating them into the country because he could relate to them and speak to them. And a lot of them are asylum seekers. They don't speak English. And so he would translate and help them find jobs and help them find houses and bring them to our house and feed them. And so a lot of me was influenced by my dad's sacrifice for others and his vision that humanitarianism is important, that generosity of human spirit is a critical aspect of humanity, that we need to think about the greater good and serve humanity, serve others. And if you can find the space or the ikigai where your talent, your passion, your skill set, and your mission and your vision are aligned with giving to something bigger than yourself, you are going to be highly successful. And that was, even though we grew up in a lot of stress in a home, as you might be aware, a lot of hardship and stress, I had a very deep connection with my purpose from a very young age.
We should take a minute to give shout out to your parents, especially to your dad, for giving you the upbringing he gave, but also enabled you to be where you are. It's reflected in your work, where you are, and you've already accomplished so much in your journey, and now the society is going to benefit from this. What you are doing, it's all longing and coming towards where it's headed. It's all your belief system that was inculcated in you through these family values. So once again, shout out to your parents for doing such a great job.
Can I share something that I think is really valuable that I think listeners would resonate with, which is, no matter where, if you're an immigrant child or not, but something that I take very seriously with my children with my own children who are 15 and 18, two boys. And my grandmother and my grandfather, my dad's side, were genocide victims from the Armenian genocide. They were orphaned at 5 years of age. Their parents were killed and murdered in front of them. And really young children, they saw the Turkish, military people come and kill their parents in front of them with a knife, with a machete. And my grandmother would recount seeing her parents murdered in front of her. That's a traumatic experience. And I'm very passionate about this because, and here's where the generational health comes in, okay? Because that impacts generational health, that impacts biologically, epigenetically. That trauma impacted my grandmother and her eggs that formed my dad, that formed me. And so generational trauma is inherited, and the epigenetic signatures and how you respond to stress are inherited, which becomes an opportunity to be hyper attuned to environmental conditions because you're very attuned to stressors and environmental conditions. And if you harness that in the right way, you could become a very passionate leader and person that understands humanity. But here's where the generational piece comes in. Every single human being on planet Earth wants their children to be better than them. It's a universal concept everybody wants your child to survive. It's evolution, right? Survival of the fittest. You give to your offspring the best, and you want your child to thrive and flourish and create life in the future again and replicate the cycle. So one of the most important lessons that I learned and what my dad taught me is don't waste what we sacrificed. Your grandmother sacrificed her life. Her entire trajectory was shaped by being a genocide. She fought for her life for years. She raised a family. She raised my dad. My dad raised me. My children know that story. And what I want everybody to know is that you want your children to inherit the desire to do better than you and to give more than you. And it's not about monetary impact. It's about life impact and human impact. And that is something that we all carry in us and that we lose in the translation of our three-dimensional world where it's all about money and status and all this stuff. But who are you and what do you represent to humanity and how are you impacting others is something that's not lost on me and something that I've given to my children as a legacy of what I want them to build on from what my legacy is and my grandmother's legacy is.
Wow, what a powerful message. It is, we don't want to waste any sacrifices made before our generation, and we should always strive to make the next generation better than us. And
Exactly.
With that, I want to take the conversation forward to your current venture. And what was the defining moment for you that made you realize that fertility needed a complete reimagination, revamp? Tell us what led to the creation of the company, and then also a little bit about what exactly Vie Science is doing to solve. What problem does it solve today?
Yeah, I love those questions. Thank you. Thank you for being interested in this. So my journey to fertility started when I was 5. Really, it did, because I've been fascinated with reproduction and with the wildlife and animal species and how they, how life is created has been something that has been a curious question in me since I was a child. And just the origination of our people and where we come from has been something I've been pondering since I was 4 or 5 years old. And even just consciousness and alignment and awareness has been something I've been identifying with since I was very young. And the journey took me to the idea that we are here in this time-space reality for a very short period of time. And there's time before and time after, and it's billions of years old. And reproduction is the process in which our species continues. It's going to continue for thousands and thousands of years. And understanding that we've not understood that, right? We haven't understood. We understand Darwinism. We understand environment impacts fertility, impacts reproduction, success, offspring, survival. But what does it mean to be human, and how does our history inform the life cycle is what Vie's about. Vie's about understanding that creating life is more than just eggs and sperm. It's about a couple, and the couple creates life. And the couple has a history that they bring in from their grandparents, right? And that ancestral information is carried on our DNA, not through our genes, but through our epigenome. And the epigenome is ancestral memory of the environment, okay? It's millions of years of information that's carried into our epigenetics that signals to our genes how to create and how to be and how to express. And there's so much that we don't know about that. Importantly, we've never captured ever in the history of humanity the exposome across the life course that informs reproduction, informs fertility. So V is about collecting and capturing the exposome, the environment, the total environment, the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, how much sleep we take, where we live, the geospatial coordinates, our diagnoses, our life histories, every piece of our environment we can collect. We have opportunities now with AI and with digital technology to create, basically think of us as an incubator, right? If you take yourself from the perspective of, let's say, the universe or God, we can see the environment. We could capture that environment across time. No one's captured it and how it impacts eggs and sperm and pregnancy and live birth. So V is the opportunity, just like we've captured the genome and we've measured the genome with 23andMe and DNA sequencing. We've captured the genome, right? We've never captured the environmental exposome ever. No one's mapped it out. So V is about mapping out not the genome, but the exposome. And the exposome, when you put it with the genome and you put it with the epigenome, now you see how life is formed. And that's what V is about. V is about collecting the exposome, bringing data sources from other companies like 23andMe or companies like, hopefully we partner with Tempest to be able to get the epigenetics and the proteomics, and eventually, these are expensive tests, but creating the biological, because what creates disease? What creates health? What creates pregnancy, like life? It's gene times environment, right? It's biology times environment. We've done a good job at measuring biology, relatively good. We're still working on the technologies. We've never captured the E, the environment. And that's what V is about. V is about bringing that model of E times G, environment times genetics or environment times biology, and looking at the total modality of reproduction and creating opportunities to modify, engineer, synthesize, enhance those parameters to impact reproductive success.
Wow. So there's certainly nothing like this exists right now, based on what you have told me. So this is already how much I was smiling with acknowledgement when you were saying the initial part of it, like how much we don't know of how this works. And why I was doing this is because when I and my wife, before we were pregnant, we thought we knew stuff. But once we got pregnant to delivering the baby, I felt like there were so many things that happened during that period. And even from, getting doctors to like, oh, she's having these kind of pains to this. And there were no answers to a lot of times. And those, or the answers were more like, yeah, this is just pregnancy. That's how it works. And so now if anybody asks me like how this works, I'm actually went back in my understanding of how pregnancies work. I say like it's just miracle. You just don't know from until to the start to the point the baby is born. It's just miracle of life because there's so many things and we just don't know what's happening.
We just don't know. So you raised 2 points. You raised 2 points. So one is there's such a gap in our understanding. We haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg in how we make babies. What makes us fertile? What makes us healthy? What creates a healthy baby, right? We don't even know that answer yet. We know that children are born with diseases and disabilities, and in their life course, they can have cancers and diabetes and all these things. What we don't know is where those diseases originated, right? But what I know from the research that I've done at Harvard and the research that other people have done is that there's an influence from both fathers and mothers in the period of time way before they conceive that baby that will impact that child's health and survival, their health span, and their lifespan. And being able to connect the dots from your environment as a man before you conceived your baby, your environment and health of your wife before she conceived the baby, if we can connect the dots from that, because it does influence, this is how Darwinism works, right? That environment shaped your child's survival potential, its risk of cancer, its risk of heart disease, its risk of diabetes, its risk of premature mortality, its risk of developmental disorders. No one's connected those dots. So Vie is an opportunity to not only improve those conditions because we're educating and supporting couples, but to allow them to connect the dots for themselves. So now you have an archive of the environment in which you conceived your baby, and you can carry that archive data of the exposome or the environment across the pregnancy, across the early years, across your child's life. So now your child's 30 and it's got a diagnosis of breast cancer. We can link that data from what medication your wife might have been on, what drug you might have been on, what exposures and living situations or chemicals and other things you might have been exposed to that might have been a determinant to that child as an adult having an illness. And we know this from pesticide exposure in men and leukemia and childhood cancers. And we've not been able to see we don't have the arc of life in any mapped out way. And so Vie is about mapping out the arc of life from preconception to child and adult, and allowing individuals to carry that legacy archive data across their life course and having a picture of who they are from beginning of life, which started from the sperm that you made and the egg that your wife produced. That's where your child's life begins. But here's the really cool part about why this matters is because the eggs and the sperm that you use to make your child impacts that child, but also impacts your grandchild. And so this is what I'm talking about, survival. And this is why I'm so interested in our entire evolutionary pathway and how we want to engineer or modify or improve existence and humanity's potential by this type of technology and this kind of data and this type of company. Because the eggs that made you, the egg that your mother had in her body that formed you in her uterus the eggs that made you were in your grandmother's body. Okay. When your grandmother was pregnant with your mother's eggs made you, and they were in your grandmother's body. So if your grandmother was smoking or drinking or exposed to stress or had famine or had traumatic experiences, and your grandfather, before he conceived your mom, all of that information and all of those exposures and all of that environment impacted your health today. And now your genome and your epigenome and your sperm cells impacts your child and its grandchild. So there's transgenerational or multi-generational impacts of your environment on health. That's what Vie's about.
Wow. So a couple of questions to this follow-up. So one is, obviously there is a whole bunch of tests for collecting data, and that needs to happen, right? Like as you're doing this. So there is AI tech, there is obviously for diagnosing, and then there's precision health, and then there is diagnostics of tests and everything you're doing. What is are you trying to what's the cost? Is it going to be too expensive for not everyone to get this done?
Yeah.
Or are you trying to make it affordable? What's kind of where you go?
We want to make it affordable and scalable. That's a great question. So we're creating a wheel. Just think of a multidimensional, multimodal model, right? Look at all the inputs that go into that. Everybody's model will be different. We want to create a signature. The model is the signature of that person's environment and biology. And here's the good thing. The good thing is that if we have enough data on enough people, and we can collect a complete data set, which is epigenetics, proteomics, metabolomics, microbiome, exposome, diagnostic information, nutrition information, pharmaceutical data, pairing that into a multimodal, multidimensional model. And we have different groups. We have variability in the kinds of people that give us that data. You can create digital twins or digital couples is what I've termed in terms of the data in silico. And you can apply that model to people who haven't collected the data, right? Because now you have someone who looks like someone, right? And based on AI, I don't need to collect it on you if I've collected on 1,000 men like you, right? Because I'm modeling the 1,000 men like you and I'm training the model on 1,000 men that are similar to you to then tell you what you need for your precision medicine. We might be wrong, but we're going to be better off than just taking a simple blood test and asking you how old you are and testing your sperm. Now we have a synthesized model that we can use to inform other couples that maybe they can't afford the epigenetic test, but we have epigenetic data on individuals and couples that look like you. And we could use the training set to then inform new people coming into the program. That's what the power is of the data that we'll collect, is that we could train the models to create digital couples that then we can use that digital couple information to improve that couple's health, but also couples that resemble those couples. And they don't need to give us all their data. We need some parameters, and then you model the rest of them.
Yeah. You're going to be a big, I would call it a data company that's going to make all the sources come together and then provide those predictive,
That's the goal. That's the goal. It's going to be, we're offering a solution. We're offering a service. We're offering a product through the app and through the program. But at the end of the day, the power is going to be in the data that we collect and the harmonization of that data to create prediction models so that we can scale and help not just thousands of people, but millions of people with that data. And this is one of the reasons why I created the Institute, because I do believe that the power of that data should be independent from the profit of the company. And that's contentious with potential investors because they're like, the data is so valuable. But I believe in an open source system, ultimately, eventually an open source system where the data is there for everyone. The data is there for other companies to add to. And now we have a conglomerate of data. We have a repository of data that other people put into an open source. Now our models are enormously powerful because we have global data on all kinds of sources. And we use those open sources to create AI opportunities, intelligent opportunities, to then share with other companies and other solutions. And that's how we're going to solve for health and diseases across generations.
I like that. And just so for our listeners, so there are two entities. Vie Science is a for-profit arm, and then there is Vie Institute for General Health, which is the nonprofit. And like you mentioned, you are more focused on creating more of a open source data sharing model through the nonprofit. Are there any other things that you feel will be more complementary between these two, or right now that's the big picture for now?
Our initial algorithms that we have for the Vie company those are proprietary because we're modeling solutions and we're creating proprietary models and creating an IP moat around the company to secure it, and that adds value to it. But eventually, when we've mastered those models and we've created solutions that we can trust, we don't need to keep and own those anymore. Then we could offer those models to the Institute for Generational Health. And we hope to partner with dozens of companies, profit and nonprofit, to then invest their data into our repository and use it ethically through oversight by regulatory boards and other things to use that data safely in an anonymized way, de-identified way, to then create not only pharmaceuticals, but maybe peptides and nutrition and other types of innovative biotechnologies that can allow us to address fertility concerns and fertility challenges or fertility potential. Because even if you don't want a baby in your life course, you have to be invested in your fertility, because fertility is one of the most important indicators of lifespan and health span. So people who go into premature infertility or premature reproductive senescence or become infertile before their time, if you're a woman, usually it's in your 50s. If you start having reproductive decline in your 20s and 30s and early 40s, that's an indicator that you're going to have premature mortality or premature morbidity. So we want to keep people reproductively able for as many years as possible. So the reproductive lifespan, expanding your reproductive lifespan, is a strategy to improve wellness as you age. It's actually, if you want to work on longevity, you should be focused on fertility, because fertility and the hormones and the health around fertility are health promoting. So these hormones in your cycle, every cycle a woman goes through produces hormones that are neuroprotective, metabolically protective, in terms of bone density protective, in terms of mental health protective, in terms of stress management protective. They influence your sleep, your diet, your mood, your weight, your metabolism. So we don't want women not caring about if they're fertile. We don't want men not caring about if they're, if their fertility declines. Even if you never plan a child, your fertility should be something you protect and you want to maximize no matter where you are in terms of your choices around having a baby.
So really what you're saying is it is kind of a leading indicator of your longevity to if you have your fertility or, both men and women, their health is in good shape. The better it is, it's a good indicator of your lifespan and longevity in general.
Absolutely. So this is why it's called generational health, and it should be generational longevity health, because really fertility is directly tied to longevity. And creating opportunities for young people to be invested in their fertility is going to be an investment towards their longevity and an investment to society to reduce the risk of age-related diseases. So we want 20-year-olds to care about their fertility, even if they never think they're going to have a baby. Because if you suddenly find yourself, with premature ovarian failure at 32, there's a good chance you're going to have a lot of premature age-related diseases in your 50s and 60s instead of your 60s and 70s. So you bring down the clock in terms of when you start experiencing age-related diseases. It's accelerated aging. It's accelerated reproductive aging that then creates accelerated aging of heart and other tissues and other organs.
So where are you at the moment with your company? Where is Vie Science? Like, where does it already, is it operational? People can get to you and get what they needed. And also, at what stage, I know we touched upon early stage also, but what is where should, if people seeking the kind of, the help they can get from Vie Science, at what stage in their life they should engage with you?
Yeah. So Vie is a company that's early stage. We have MVP. So we have a preliminary product that we've developed. It's nowhere near where we want it to be, but we have a product that we feel confident in that we can offer to individuals and couples. It's couple based, but it doesn't have to be. An individual can join. We have right now currently our first cohort. Our first cohort was our pilot, where we have engaged with a few dozen individuals to improve their health and wellness as they're navigating their fertility journey. So what we've seen in the individuals that are in Vie right now in the first cohort is that we have about a third of individuals that are early triers. They're trying to, actually we have a few planners. People are just planning to get pregnant in the next 3 months. It's prime for that. We also have people that have been trying for less than 6 months and have had a few cycles. They haven't been successful. Vie is targeting and creates journeys for that. We have individuals that have been trying for 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, some people for several years, even longer. And we have a solution for that. It's personalized and tailored to you, because what we're doing right now in the current version is addressing what we call the root causes of fertility. Things like diet, sleep. So we have a V score. The V score has components. The components are Vie Sleep, Vie Nourish, Vie Joy, Vie Lifestyle, Vie History or reproductive history, Vie Calm, which is your mental health, Vie Vitality, which is your sexual health. These areas are all areas we can push people in tiny little steps towards improved health, right? So little tiny steps, if you start to build on those little tiny steps, move the needle from less fertile to more fertile, and it's tiny steps, but the idea is that if we improve nutrition, improve sleep, improve stress levels, improve what we have, one big component that's gotten a lot of attention is an area that I'm experienced in professionally in my research is Vie Clean. So the environment and the chemicals that you're exposed to every day and the products that you put in your body, the products in your home, the type of shampoo and soaps and where you cook your food all impact your health because these endocrine disrupting chemicals enter into your body through either food or air or transdermally and impact your hormonal balance, impact your egg quality, impact your sperm. And so individuals really need guidance on how to reduce exposure to these chemicals. So we have a whole component on this. So the program is structured around these domains, and we educate and support and provide direct information on how to make those changes and what kinds of things, for example, what foods should you swap out? What are the dirty dozen? What kinds of products should you be going around and cleaning up your environment with? What kind of supplements should you be taking? What kind of specific ingredients do you need to look at in foods? What kind of teas could you drink to help with your antioxidants? Having a nourishing, a very high concentration of antioxidants improves egg quality, for example. So we guide the individual on their journey towards addressing those root causes. We provide a score, we provide a personalized plan, and then we support that plan with individual one-on-ones with me. We also have group sessions and support groups. Right now we're developing partnerships with testing companies, people who do sperm tests, companies that do sperm tests, companies that do egg and ovulation testing, companies that test blood at home blood tests, companies that test endocrine disrupting chemicals. So testing and diagnostics is big. Partnerships with supplements, also we're working on partnerships with IVF centers and IVF clinics because we want an opportunity to pre-qualify customers in the IVF space or patients so that they're optimally ready for fertility treatment if they need it. They're not, drinking alcohol and having a toxic environment and eating bad diet, and then they go and try to get their eggs retrieved. Like, we need to create a holistic approach to their fertility journey. And so we're covering everything that the IVF doctors are not, the IVF clinics are not. And we're allowing couples to have control and agency over dozens of things in their lives, because when you're in the IVF process, you feel like you have no control. You're just kind of like a mechanical process of extracting eggs and sperm. So we want to create some humanity in that. We want to create holistic health, and we want to empower the couples to focus on things that they can control and improve their health and wellness on the journey of fertility. So we're partnering with some fertility companies as well. And eventually where we see ourselves going is, right now we are D2C. You can get on our website, you can log in, you can create, we're not quite there on the web-based platform, but you can get into our wait list, and we're going to create, in a few weeks, we'll have the web-based platform launched where we can interface with you directly through the web-based platform. We collect passive data with wearables. We collect active data through questionnaires. We encourage you to do certain testing. We create a personalized plan. But eventually where I'm going is that we want to be able to, besides going direct to consumers, go through partnerships with IVF clinics. But really the target is a B2B2C, where we hope to work with workplace wellness programs, employee and employer benefit programs, and insurance providers, because one of the opportunities here is to reduce the number of cycles, reduce the demand for treatment, or at least create a pipeline where people who end up for treatment are really those that need treatment and have tried everything else. And that's a cost saving to a company that offers IVF benefits. So if you have 100 employees and V prevents one of them from going to IVF, that's a $20,000, $30,000 saving for your company. And so we want to try to get people to have babies naturally by optimizing their chances before they need IVF. And that's a cost, that's a return on investment for, employees, employer benefit programs, and insurance providers.
And I was speaking with someone at Duke who runs the app for a lab for gene editing and protein editing. And this company was recently able to modify and turn into fertility eggs successfully, and they had their first baby from IVF process. So where do you see, do you think you will go in that direction, because you're already collecting all the data, you have AI infrastructure which is essentially needed to go?
Yes. So you're talking about protein synthesis and protein editing.
Yeah.
So this is why the data is really critical, and creating those AI models is really important, but we need the data to be able to create the models. But we might be able to identify certain proteins that need to be modified to create a certain improvement in egg quality, for example. Unless we collect the data, we'll never find that. We'll never find that. We need to create not just the data in an experiment. We need real world exposures and real world people data. And we need the multimodal parameters to see that protein needs to be synthesized or expressed in a certain way so that the egg quality or the egg membrane or the sperm impacts the fertility potential of that couple. We are definitely interested in partnering with companies that are doing that. I don't see ourselves creating those biotechnologies, but being able to help identify what those technologies need to be, or what those proteins need to be, or what those peptides need to be, or even synthesized, enzymes or other things that we haven't identified. Those are things that we hope to, and that's what the Vie Science Institute's about, is to be able to share that type of knowledge so that companies can go out and build those kinds of opportunities. Biotechnology can mine that data for those kinds of things and then create treatments and preventative solutions that we haven't been able to develop yet.
Yeah, because this is exactly goes in the same line too, that if you are able to identify with that data that you have, you can make those certain changes to, again, at the end, the babies can be delivered in one cycle instead of multiple.
Instead of 3. And the idea here is as follows, because we've done this whole investment, so much money into gene editing, right? To cure diseases, right? What my company is about engineering the environment, engineering the things that go into us, rather than engineering the biology by changing genes. Let's engineer how the epigenome gets expressed. Let's engineer through environmental exposures like diet and potential pharmaceuticals and potential supplements, nutraceuticals. How do we engineer those to enhance the health and the fertility of the couple so that they get the outcome that they want without all the fancy stuff that goes in the middle? So it's kind of different part of the problem.
But my marketing mind thinks like you are basically preventative fertility care, right?
Yeah, exactly. Preventative fertility care. Yeah.
It is what, like, you'll have all the things that needs to happen. If those are, of course, recording the data, making sure if it's not done in the right way, what actions then done to improve it, and then building that so that it's not caught at the last moment and it's done from the start, from the beginning.
Right. Yeah. And right now we're starting with what the evidence tells us are the things that we've studied that we know improve and prevent poor outcomes or enhance positive outcomes. But eventually we'll have much more information because we're collecting it on all the different things that can improve the outcome. Because right now we have the stuff that we've published on, the evidence that we've built. We're also creating an AI-powered assistant that's going to be highly knowledgeable and highly attuned to each couple. So we're training that model right now. The AI-powered basically is called an AI-powered bot, but it's an AI-powered version of me that has all the evidence that's been published in the bot, plus new evidence that we're collecting de novo every day through the individuals that we're measuring things on to then create for that couple a personalized assistant towards their fertility journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it because going through fertility cycles, even through, we've done one IVF and we actually did two IVFs,
Yeah.
and then we went through natural baby. So kind of, I talked to you about this earlier, that
You're a great case.
yeah. So it's like, could have been natural itself from the beginning.
Even if you
And
need IVF, you can conceive without IVF, which is what we want to focus on.
yeah, and so many friends in my circle, I know that they're going through this multiple cycles, and also there is a humanizing factor to that, because they feel like when they're in this treatment, it feels like a factory, right? Like they just come in,
Feels like
do
that.
this, which is very kind of not anybody should feel that, especially when you're trying to do things like
Have a
this.
baby. Yeah.
So I am really gung ho about your mission, and really looking forward to how we comes to life and serves this gap what we have. I think like this black box that we don't know about
Black box.
fertility.
Right.
Where it starts. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a black
Yeah.
box.
So
Open it and figure it out.
yeah, and so before we conclude today's conversation, let's take to the lighter note where in this conversation, and I asked two fun questions. The first question is there a book, podcast, or mentor that profoundly influenced your work? Who is that, or what is that book or podcast or mentor?
So that's a great question. I would say probably the most influential thing I've ever read and ever been exposed to, and I've listened to it for over a decade, and I've listened to it maybe at least 4 or 5 times. I'm re-listening to it again, is the book by Neil Donald Walsh called Conversations with God. I think we're at the precipice of really understanding so much more about humanity and our human experience. And I'm extremely spiritual, and I have a deep practice around meditation and understanding that, however you want to define it, God or universe or collective consciousness or unity consciousness, there's much more to this life experience than the 3-dimensional hologram that we're living in. And tapping into the power of the mind to create your experience and shifting your 3-dimensional world based on what is actually in your subconscious and conscious mind is a very powerful, underutilized in most people, but people who can tap into it have the potential to create any life that they want. And that book is extremely valuable because it really educates you on this idea. And, I think one of the most important things that we have yet to see is that as the universe is expansive, infinite, right? On the outside, if you keep going, it's infinite. The universe is infinite. The infinite space within ourselves and within our consciousness is as deep as the universe is deep. And there's an infinite potential within our consciousness that we've not tapped into. And I think AI is allowing us to really understand what that potential is, because that intelligence that's within us is as intelligent. We've created AI through that intelligence. And so there's infinite potential on the outside world. There's infinite potential on the inside world. And that is critical to our human experience and critical to our survival and to our future as a people. And that book is probably a big factor in how I've developed these ideas.
Awesome. We are going to put the link to this book wherever your podcast. You'll have this link in the description. And last but not the least, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Vie Science. That's the company's website. And I also have a link tree, which you can find a whole host of materials that I've published online. And you could just send me an email or a direct message on Instagram with my handle at Dr. Messerlian. I have become a little bit of a fan of Instagram, although I've not mastered it yet, and I'm still a junior person in it. But I love communicating with people, and reach out to me if you want to chat.
All right. Again, we will put all the links in the description. The website is Vie Science. And again, thanks for your time. I really appreciate all your journey, your personal journey, and your mission, and excited to see how everything will pan out. I'm very sure, very confident that you're definitely, there's a big gap and you're tackling that. Of course, by no means it's an easy undertaking. It is going to be a mountain to climb, but
Yeah.
I am very confident with you know your life experiences, your credibility, your experience. This is a big problem to solve, and I feel really good that that someone is addressing this, because I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's such a black box, to say the
As
least,
an
especially the
entrepreneur, you're as an entrepreneur yourself, you know the hurdles that we have to overcome to get a business launched, profitable, and
yeah.
successful. But I'm very excited about it, and I'm grateful for your time and interest in my story.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time once again. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.